Hey guys, I just finished my Dune video review and now I feel like getting on another review and I want to talk about Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. And this has been on my list for a pretty long time, and it's interestingly one of the few books where everybody who has listened to the audiobook insists that the audiobook is fantastic because Trevor reads it and he does all the voices for all the characters in the book and he is good at doing impressions. So I am actually tempted for the first time to get an audiobook. So I usually prefer to read because I like to read, and but I may get the audiobook because it's so good. It's really good. And it's almost so I've watched some of Trevor's comedy, and I even watched a documentary called Daywalker, which was about his rise as a comedian in South Africa. And I've always liked Trevor, I think. And I think we have a lot in common, which is that he's been through much worse than I have. But so he was born to a black mother and a white father in South Africa when there was apartheid going on, which made him born a crime because it was illegal for that to happen. So he's a really funny guy, very charismatic, and very playful and naughty, and he has this playful curiosity that I really enjoy. And let me kind of just go through the chapters. I would say that the book is way better than I expected it to be, and I wonder if it's because and like I don't want to, this is a bit of a backhanded compliment, I guess, but like having watched his comedy and having kind of seen some of his talk show stuff, I know that Trevor is smart. I can see that he's smart, and I know that he's thoughtful and he's traveled and he has considered multiple perspectives and multiple cultures, and that there's a kind of intelligence to that. But the book seems even smarter than that. So I'm guessing he had a fantastic editor or he had fantastic support and help on the project of the book, which isn't a diminishment of Trevor. It's an elevation of the book. Like Trevor seems pretty great. This book seems even greater in my assessment. Like I was amazed at like the structure of the book is very well laid out. The storytelling is amazing. The anecdotes are great. It's I didn't expect it to be as moving as it is. I guess like, so again, the comedy is kind of a vehicle, I guess, for Trevor to share his perspectives and insights. And I think I get the sense that Trevor is someone who learned to be funny because it helped him navigate difficult social situations, and he's automatically always put in difficult social situations because he is mixed, right? And so at some point I believe he was actually in jail. I don't think he was like in prison, but like he was arrested for driving, like his stepfather had a car repair shop, and he was driving one of the cars of one of the customers, and then he got stopped and arrested for driving a car with a different number plate or something, or with no number plate, if I don't remember the details. But like just he experienced going to prison, to jail, not prison but jail, and jail is kind of like segregated by race, and he had to make the decision of, who am I gonna sit with, because like, what am I? Am I white? Am I brown? Am I black? Like he had to make that choice. And when I got to that point in the book, I was like, holy shit! Like shit gets real, man. Like he really had to deal with that. And a person who has to deal with something like that, really earns my respect, because that's some real shit. Like lots of people argue all the time about superficial stuff when, it's kind of a proxy play fighty thing where. You don't really like. Yeah, you have what you think are troubles, and they are troubles. I'm sure the troubles are real to you, but it's not the same as you're in jail and being with the wrong group. You may end up getting beaten and killed, even, right? And Trevor had to deal with that. It's amazing. Trevor's mom is amazing. She's a incredible character. I believe they're gonna make a movie, and I believe Lupita Nyong'o is gonna play his mom, which I'm excited about. I'm definitely gonna watch it. The book opens with Trevor's mom throwing him out of a moving car, because like they had to get away from like a difficult situation, and he talks about religion, and it's for my own reference. I love how Trevor makes himself likable by talking about his nerdy interests, and in this regard, he reminds me as well of Hassan Minhaj. and they both do the same thing. Where with Hassan in Homecoming King, he talks about playing video games and wanting to go on a date, wanting to go to prom with the girl that he loved, or as a teenager, like the girl that he was into, and she was into him back, and then her parents didn't approve of them going together, and just that story of desire and connection and heartbreak. It just humanizes Hassan so much. And Trevor does the same thing. He talks about just like the challenges he has, kind of like, so there's like fun, small, cute challenges with him and his mom, and just kind of low stakes fun play that you relate to, like, oh, me and my mom, I'm too much for her, and she tells me not to underestimate her, and she's chasing him around because he's naughty, and it's cute. And then later on, they are like in life-threatening situations, and they have to run. And so earlier on, when he jokes, nobody ran like me and my mom, it's funny. And later on, when they are in danger and they have to run, and he says, no one runs like me and my mom, like that really, it moved. I felt like crying. I can't remember if I actually did cry, but it was really moving, and really, it's like social commentary, right? Like here's an individual's life. It's his life. It's the little things about. Just to skip ahead a little bit, there's this chapter where he's living with his grandmother who's like practically blind, I think, and he doesn't want to use the gross toilet outhouse that's outside the house, and so he decides to take a shit on a piece of newspaper indoors, and then throw that away in like the dustbin. And his grandmother finds out, like she smells it, I guess, and like the whole village comes along to and they think it's like a witch or like a curse or something, and then he has to just that whole. I was laughing I just kept laughing. It's so funny to imagine, and it's presumably a true story that just the whole village came to cast out his shit and to burn it and to burn the demon, and then they asked him to pray because he's very eloquent and they like him to pray, and so he's kind of like hedging. He's like, oh, we don't know who did this, and maybe there's some reason for it that we don't understand, that kind of, and it's just funny to see him kind of caught in the middle. And I think that some, like, so if his title wasn't something like Born a Crime, which is obviously a very, very powerful title, I think another way of me processing this book is just he's caught in the middle all the time. And there's a chapter that moved me a lot where he was in school, and he went to different schools at different points in times, and people were kind of just mean to him, and he decided to become like relevant by being the canteen guy, like the guy who at recess would would dash straight away to go and buy food early, like be at the front of the queue. And then he made friends with the fat kids, and who wanted to help him place their orders. And just the way he describes his experience of social reality, it really resonated with me. I related to a lot of it, like just the, like, how he had no table to sit at, he had no kind of inherited in-group that would definitely take care of him, and so he had to kind of like charm his way into making friends. He belonged to no group, so he had to learn to move seamlessly between groups. I was a chameleon, a cultural chameleon. I learned how to blend. I could play sports with the jocks. I could talk computers with the nerds. I popped around to everyone, working, chatting, telling jokes, making deliveries. I was like a wheat dealer, but of food. The wheat guy is always welcome at the party. He's not a part of the circle, but he's invited temporarily because of what he can offer. That's who I was, always an outsider. As the outsider, you can retreat into a shell, be anonymous, be invisible, or you can go the other way. You protect yourself by opening up. You don't ask to be accepted for everything you are, just the one part of yourself that you're willing to share. For me, it was humor. I learned that even though I didn't belong to one group, I could be a part of any group that was laughing. I'd drop in, pass out a few snacks, tell a few jokes, I'd perform for them, catch a bit of their conversation, learn more about their group, and then leave. I never overstayed my welcome. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't an outcast. I was everywhere with everybody, and at the same time, I was all by myself. I relate to this completely. Like, this is my life. Like I've never had like a group of people who I completely relate to and who I can trust to take care of me. So I've always just had to make friends everywhere I go, and I've always had to do whatever it takes, right? And I found myself thinking, like, you can't compete as a comedian. It's very difficult to compete as a comedian with someone who had to be a comedian to survive. Like, it was something he had to do to live, potentially. right? And he talks about going on dates. He talks about later on he becomes a DJ of sorts, and he was in the projects, and he talks about the whole economy of what that's like, and he talks about the cheese boys, who are a couple of like just different socioeconomic classes, people from different socioeconomic classes, and how the status works. So him and his friends, at some point they were a bunch of upstanding, well-spoken East Bank boys who could charge a premium because we added that layer of respectability to the transaction. So like moms who needed short-term loans would prefer to deal with us than with some gangster loan shark. And just there's so much nuance. I feel like you get into social reality. Like Trevor understands people. Like my that's my sense. And so I find myself now, when I look at, I find it interesting to try and reconcile the book, with the way Trevor seems to conduct himself as a talk show host and as a public figure. And I do understand that a book is like a labor of love, right? It's something you can work on for a long period of time. You can edit it, you can modify it, you can make yourself look more confident and charismatic and skilled than you might really be. I think there in real life, in the live game, you will make mistakes. In the live game, you will do things that are wrong, that are imperfect. But overall, I think reading this book has made me revise my assessment of Trevor upwards. Like, I expect him to accomplish, hopefully, him having seen what he's seen and having lived the life that he's lived, I imagine that he would have bigger ambitions than just kind of, I want to be a popular talk show host and be a celebrity and make a lot of money. I'm projecting, of course. I to some degree, I need people like Trevor, or I want people like Trevor and Hassan to have bigger ambitions. And when I say bigger ambitions, I don't just mean, I mean on the scale of what 50 to 100 years ago might have been statesmen, right? Like people creating new ways for people to come together and to relate to each other. And yeah, I would love to meet him and chat with him someday about his life, and I have questions for him about just the comedy and tragedy and social reality and the challenges that people face, and how can we do better to help more people integrate and get along, right? So I would say those of us who've been through kind of a kind of trauma, right, of being social outcasts and outsiders, and then we teach ourselves to be charismatic and interesting and funny. Like, we learn the skill set that actually everybody needs. Everybody needs to be able to connect with other people. Everybody needs to be able to make friends. Everybody needs to be able to relate to others and interface with others, right? And there is a certain, I don't know if you'd call it a poetic justice, that the outsiders end up being the ones who are most capable. Like, yeah, that I reflect on my own life as well, and it's kind of cool that as I approach 30, right? I'm 29. I'll be 30 in June. As I get older and become an adult, I feel like the difficulties that I went through when I was younger, it like all of that came through for me. The struggle made me who I am, right? I was molded by the darkness or whatever, and but the thing is, it's not like I want other people to suffer, right? I suffered, Trevor suffered, and I'm projecting again, but I feel like we don't want other people to suffer. That's why we share. We want to share our stories and our experiences and our learnings, so that we can do better, right? So that people can realize how. I think one of Trevor's talking points is kind of he approaches racism with this cheeky curiosity, where his point is like, yeah, racism is evil, sure, racism is horrible and cruel, but it's also stupid. Like, that's the fun part. That's the crack that you can, so like, if you tell someone, oh, you're a racist, and that's you're a bad person. I mean, racism is bad, so if I say that you're a racist, that means you're a bad person. And I think what Trevor and I both agree on, I'm guessing, is that it's not a good way to have a productive conversation, and it's somehow far more effective most of the time, it seems, or the role that we play. And I guess dismantling something like racism requires a very multifaceted approach, and you need different voices with different perspectives and different priorities to address it. But like, I agree with Trevor in the sense that if you want to solve something like racism, you need the buy-in of the people who are perpetuating that system. They may not necessarily be racist themselves, or maybe they have been, right? Like, I do feel like when I look back on my own life, I grew up in the same culture as everybody else. So I grew up as a man, as a boy. I grew up with like in a misogynistic culture. I did grow up in a world that thought of women as in some ways less than men, or less, maybe not explicit. They wouldn't explicitly. No one sits you down and say, "Hey, women are less than men." But you hear messages like, "Oh, she's a slut. She deserved it." Like, you hear those things from women as well, right? And you internalize it as, "Oh, that's just how the world is. Like women shouldn't do this, women shouldn't do that." Why? Because everyone else says that that's how it is. And so you internalize. It's like, it's not so much that you are a misogynist or you are a racist. It's that you have misogyny or you have racism, and you didn't come up with it all by yourself, right? It's something. It was in the air. It was in the water that you were drinking, effectively. And so, like, if you want to address it, you have to get the buy-in of the person who wants to. You have to convince the person that they want to not have it anymore. And again, like, if you say that you are a bad person because you are a racist or because you're a misogynist, and it will not get fixed until you become a good person. Like, the first response is, "Fuck you," like who are you to tell me who I am and how I am and how, whether I'm a bad person or not. But if you point out that misogyny and racism are stupid and funny and silly, right? And we can all laugh at it together, then it becomes kind of easier for us to step out of, "Oh, I'm a bad person." It's more of like, "Oh, that's silly, that's stupid. Like, we don't have to do that. Like, we can do better." And then, you kind of, you almost distract people away from their racism or misogyny and bigotry. I know it's not that simple. I know it's way more complex. I know that some things are unforgivable, some things are intolerable. But in a kind of general day-to-day life scenario, in a kind of generally what's the word I'm looking for? Inert? Just in normal life, in everyday life, like, it's generally more effective to charm people and be playful and joyous around them than to, like, accuse them of things. Even if the accusations are legit, right? Like, so even if a person, is guilty of it's not a crime, right? It's tacky or it's socially suboptimal. Like, the way to get them out of it there may be better ways. Like, I don't have all the answers. I'm figuring it out as I go. I have methods that have seemed to have worked for me, and reading about Trevor's life, I feel like he also kind of has a pretty good idea of how to make things work. And I'm reminded of that story by that black man who befriended members of the KKK, which, again, it takes something superhuman almost, right, to seek out to make friends with people who dehumanize you, who think of you as less than a person, but you know that they don't know who you are, and they've never actually spent time with people like you, and so what they have is a hallucination, right? Their judgment of you is not real. It's not. I mean, while it's a hallucination, they can kill you over a hallucination. So it's real on that front. Like, they can ruin your life. They are acting with imperfect information, and it has real human costs. People die, and people are messed up because of other people's hallucinations. But if you have the wherewithal, right? If you have the strength or the space or the fortitude, right? And not everybody has it, and you can't ask people to have it. It's not a fair request that you insist that somebody else take responsibility for other people's emotions and feelings and hallucinations. Like, you're not responsible for how other people make assumptions about you. But if it's an invitation rather than an obligation, like, so if you have the ability, if you have the capacity to do it, and to be a charming, friendly, charismatic person who is creating spaces for people to laugh and reconsider and reevaluate and revise who they are and how they conduct themselves, I think it's worth doing. And it was very affirming for me to read Trevor's story, and I definitely recommend it to everyone. I do think that everyone, regardless of race, gender, whatever, they would get something out of reading Born a Crime.